Welcome back. So over the weekend, I've been playing with the Sony RX0 Mark II. I threw it up against the GoPro Hero 7 Black, as well as the RX100 Mark V-A. What I wanted to answer was, can it replace either of these devices? Where does it sit? And I found some interesting results. It definitely sits right in between both of these packages. So let's dive into a few examples here. We've got some photo tests, some video tests. We're gonna do stabilization up against the GoPro, picture and video quality up against the RX100, see how they stack up, and then wrap up with our final thoughts. Let's take a quick look at some photos off of this guy. The first one's here. Really what I want to show is it's going to take some amazing photos. However, you'll see the dynamic range is maybe compressed a little bit on here. In this first example photo, you see the background is kind of just overblown, and the actual foreground here in the shadows, Lena's face is a little bit underexposed. We can compensate for that and expose her face like we did in this shot, but then you're not getting any detail out of the sky in this. So it does take great photos. However, what I'm seeing is with cell phones nowadays, because they're really layering images together, they can represent a high dynamic range, even though the sensors on them aren't that great. So the quality's not gonna be as good, but I feel like an S10, something of that nature, could take a higher dynamic range photo than the RX0. So this is definitely a rugged camera. It's something that could be called as rugged as the GoPros. It's crush proof, drop proof, waterproof. There's a lot of reasons why you would see these in a competitive market with one another. However, as we can see here, the stabilization is not gonna be as good. I did find things like audio quality were a little bit better for me on this. It picked up a lot of wind noise. I do not have wind reduction on this right now, so be aware of that as you listen to some of these scenes. So we rode around already with it set up like this. Let's throw it on our chest now, and then we'll ride around as well, see how that stacks up, compare them, and see, can this be an action cam, or is it really just a rugged professional pocket cam? All right, guys, so you can see we've got the RX0 Mark II on our left, GoPro on the right. We're gonna throw these now back on the bike, ride around, see how they stabilize. Which one's gonna perform better? I have a feeling the GoPro will be better, but the question is the RX0 good enough? Let's go find out. You know, I'm noticing the Sony here doesn't have the best field of view. I know it's 24mm, I thought it'd be better. The other thing I want to point out here is that I am taking these videos both off camera directly. So there is a companion app for the RX0, which does some digital stabilization, but I wanted you to see kind of off camera what it's gonna look like. If you're using something like Final Cut or Premiere, you're gonna be able to stabilize it in that app as well. So what I want to show you is straight off camera here. And you can see it wasn't too bad when it was strapped to my chest. However, on the handlebars, it's incredibly shaky and most likely unusable. All right, how'd they do? As you can see, I got a pretty outrageous setup here. We've got the Sony RX0 Mark II on the left, and we've got the GoPro Hero 7 Black on the right. Does this serve as an action cam, or is the GoPro really just gonna blow it out of the water? They're both ruggedized. In my opinion, they're both set to be towards the action cam market. We can see the Sony's a little bit smaller in terms of height and maybe width. They're about the same. However, it is a little bit thicker here. Overall, I don't see it replacing the GoPro. If you need heavy stabilization, this is still gonna be your go-to any day of the week. However, for lighter sports, for things where maybe this is just bouncing a tiny bit, or if you want to cut scenes together and it's not an issue for you to knock out the really bouncy ones, this is usable in those scenarios. But I think we answered the question. It's not nearly close to the GoPro stabilization, and it's not going to replace it in those instances. So we're about to test out the RX100 Mark V-A against the RX0 Mark II. We're going to do kind of a B-roll battle, so we're going to do some slow motion of Lena here working out. Our subject for the day. So she's gonna do some workout routines. We're gonna get some film in this park. We're gonna go to another park. We'll also do some stabilization tests between the two, see how those stack up, take some photos, and then last but not least, I've got this so we can do digital zoom on here. We'll try 4K and 1080 digital zoom to see how it compares to the actual optical zoom on the RX100. You can see from this test, the digital zoom really isn't that good on here. In fact, the only way I've found you can actually even zoom on it is with this kind of tripod accessory that you can buy for it. And I think it's just the fact they wanted these buttons to work, but the digital zoom provided doesn't look good. You may as well do it in post when you're editing later on anyway. As we look at a few sample images here, you can definitely notice the dynamic range, the picture quality, the background blur, kind of everything's a little bit better out of the RX100 as we come to expect because it's got f1.8. And then this has f4. So this also has variable ND. There's a lot of reasons why this is gonna take a little bit better photos than this one. However, when you compare size, you compare weight, this is a lot more pocketable. So there are scenarios where if you don't have a lot of pocket space, travel space, whatever, I may grab this over the RX100 for photos. All right, so now we're just doing a walk test kind of vlogging. We've got them on the same rig here. So from what I've seen, again, the RX100 is not too good. So I'm hoping the RX0 has a little bit better, whatever they're doing with the software here. So let's find out. All right, so now we just jumped up to 4K vlogging test. They're both on the same gimbal, so we should have the same amount of shake going to both cameras. How are they doing? Does one look significantly better than the other? My hope is the RX0 Mark II is gonna do a lot better. And let's see if we notice a difference between 1080p, which was the last clip, and 4K 30, which is this clip. As you're watching this video, I'm happy to report that there's noticeably better stabilization out of the RX0. That's what I had hoped for. It made sense. Even though it's digital, it's still going to be noticeably better than the RX100, and that was its weakest point to me on the RX100. If you're walking around trying to talk, even filming and moving your hand around, there's a lot of shake coming out of this camera. So RX0 Mark II, good job on stabilization compared to the RX100. So overall, where does it put this then? For me, smack in the middle. It's not quite a GoPro, it's not quite an RX100, it's somewhere in between. It makes me curious of Sony's strategy there because I can find use cases for this. I think this is gonna be my travel camera. If I wanna film on a plane, in the hotel room, kind of quick, either photo or video, this is really good for that type of use case. It does have the external audio input on the back, so that's something that I love. It doesn't have it on the RX100 series. I hope they add that in the future. So just the fact that you can plug in external audio to this, whether it's a lav mic or a shotgun mic, makes it much more improved for me in my use cases because I can get that extra audio quality. And in the case of a lav mic, I can actually walk away from the camera and still pick up the audio that I have. At the same time though, you know there's better options if you're focused more on picture quality or if you're focused more around action sports. I think you're gonna lean one way or the other. So it leaves this kind of in an awkward spot. The biggest downfall of this camera is the fact that it doesn't have continuous autofocus. That goes for photos and videos. It doesn't matter whether you're in 1080 or 4K. There is no continuous autofocus on this. So if you notice, there was one scene where I was focused on my bike handles and as I looked up, things were really blurry. That's because there's no continuous AF. I don't know if they can add that through firmware updates in the future, but I definitely hope so, as that's really a fatal flaw of this camera right now. But I'm really curious to see what your guys' feedback is. Do you find that this is kind of the perfect balance of both, or do you find that they're trying to achieve a jack of all trades, master of none, and it's gonna leave it kind of on its own island where people aren't attracted to it? If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll do future comparisons with this. I'd like to throw it up against the DJI Osmo Pocket, as well as a few other cameras around here. But overall, that's my thoughts on this. I definitely found some use cases for it, but it awkwardly sits between these two kinds of cameras. So that's it, guys. As always, it's been a pleasure having you. If you haven't subscribed, definitely consider it, and I'll see you next time.